Okay, yeah, wow, here we are. I gotta say, Malynda, this is wild because we're starting a new. You used the word new season before we started recording, and I thought to myself, like, it's so funny because you don't come from like white evangelical world, but the new season language for so many of us is like, it's like so cringe because of how we grew
Is
up.
it really?
Isn't that terrible? It's terrible.
Wow.
That's not even. I gotta be honest. Like, I'm trying to get over that hump now. Like, you kind of go through this, like, you're in the space, then you kind of deconstruct, and everything is kind of like cringe. And now I'm like, there's nothing wrong with saying the phrase "new season." It's a
Yeah.
true
See, I
statement.
come from the
But
acting
yeah.
background. So like everything's a new season. It's like you have pilot season, you have audition season, you have a new season of a show. Like that's what my thought process is. That's so interesting.
Yeah,
It,
yeah.
and it's funny being on this side of it because I know a lot of people part of the TNE community will be learning more of my story, but I didn't come from evangelical background or grow up with fundamentalism. So I am learning a lot of like terminology that I'm like, wait, that meant what to y'all? Like it's really interesting because I just don't have those like triggers or that emotional reaction to certain things. So that's interesting. A new season is one of those things. Wow.
How have you felt being executive director over the past few months? I mean, some people who listen to the podcast might not even know that because even though we say the same thing 1,000 times, right? This always reaches like a new person or someone who maybe hasn't tuned in for a while. But you are the new executive director, and I am kind of curious to hear your thoughts on how it's been for you.
It's been interesting because for me, I do feel like I was in the right position in my life and my skill set and just where I've been in general to be able to go into this position. And it's funny because people ask like, do you have time? And it's like, no, I don't have time, but I'm going to make the time because this feels very important and this feels like where I'm supposed to be right now. And I know I've made this joke with you before. In the beginning, it did feel like I was just going into somebody's messy room and trying to organize it. And I don't mean that in a bad way.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, somebody would come into my room and be like, I don't know where anything goes. Like, how you're telling me to organize it. But what I've loved about everybody and working with you, working with the board and working with, Cassidy and all of the people that are part of TNE is it's such a collaborative space and everybody just wants it to succeed and everybody wants to do good work. So I've really enjoyed being in this position because it's been fun to give back in this way. It's been fun to figure out how to reclaim our faith. It's been fun to add more organizational offerings and also cater to the community, but also stay true to like the social media content. Like there's so many different pillars to TNE. So that it's been just like this fun game, I guess, for me to like, how can we put all these pieces together to make this really incredible movement and this beautiful thing happen? So yeah, it's a lot of work, but it's going to pay off, and it is paying off. I think everything's going well so far. Yeah.
Yeah, it feels great. It is. Yeah, I was thinking about the origin of TNE and how it just happened. Literally, I tell this story all the time. It just really happened by accident, right? Like I just posted online on Instagram under this handle that I thought of, and and it started growing really organically. I mean, I think to date. We've never paid for. I mean, I never paid for ads. I never I was never putting money into Instagram. It just kind of happened. And you realize that like, okay, you're trying to do things as ethically as you can, but you're also like realize that you're just kind of new at this. You're kind of throwing spaghetti against the wall to see what sticks and what works and what doesn't. You learn a lot along the way. But it is interesting because I mean you really are right. Like I gave you a very messy office essentially, right? Now it was my office, so I knew how it functioned. I had this vision in my head. But to other people, I think sometimes they looked at TNE and were like, so what do you guys do? And I'm like, well, depending on the day, it might change, and that's just me being such an ultra creative in that sense. I feel like I was, how they say sometimes pastors know just enough music to get themselves in trouble. Right, they'll come on the stage and start leading the band, and you're like, "Oh no, he knows, or they know just enough." That was me on the admin side, right? Like I knew just enough to get me in trouble.
That is so funny. Oh my gosh!
But I love that all the pieces that were built over the years I think you've seen them. I think you refined a lot of them. I think that you said, hey, some of these aren't necessary anymore. And it's like, yeah, they're really not. But the ones that are, how do we kind of keep polishing and building on them? And I will say, like, coming back from sabbatical, my first time ever having a whole month off of work, coming back, it felt like in my mind, I felt like I was walking back into an actual organization. Like there's a team and there's structure and there's a plan. And that's just not how I am as a human. I mean, I'm not ashamed of that. I'm just not wired that way.
We're all different. We're all different.
And it's been really great watching TNE get some legs that let it stand beyond just whatever I can give it, which honestly was always kind of the plan, So that feels real nice.
Absolutely. I've always wanted to ask you, and I feel like we've had this conversation before, but mom brain, so I'm going to ask again. Why did you choose the New Evangelicals? Why did you choose that name?
So the reason I chose it was I was sitting on my porch. It had to be around like August, September, October-ish of 2020. So we're still in pandemic mode. At this point, our oldest is like 3 months old. He was born in May. And, you have a lot of time. And I was at the point where I didn't know how deep the corrosion went, but I knew something wasn't right in my space of the Christian circle, right? And I was really curious about like what was beyond that. And I remember watching Sean Foyt, the worship guy, right, during the pandemic, doing these maskless protests, hands off, faith over fear kind of thing. And I just said, like, in a moment of frustration, like, I'm just so tired of this. Now, Malynda, you and I share the passion and professionalism of music as well, right? I was a drummer for a lot of years, and you still play professionally as a vocalist and do a lot of other things too. And so I'm sitting there watching this dude and sing worship songs that I sing at church. And I'm thinking, this guy does not represent the values that I have. And I was like, we need a new something, like a new evangelical movement. Like, we need new evangelicals. And that's how the name came to me. And I was like, I kind of like that name because I think that, like, we need to think about these things in new ways. Now, I'll be honest, over the past several years, I've wrestled with, is that even a good name to use these days, But people ask me that often. And what I tell them is the term evangelical is really malleable. If you go back to the early abolitionist movement, it was some of the early Wesleyan evangelicals who were on the forefront of the Underground Railroad. Throughout evangelicalism, there's been feminists and gay people and black folks and all kinds of folks pushing for a broader faith and a broader tradition in evangelicalism. Unfortunately, fundamentalists have won out. So I still have hope in that sense of like, hey, I kind of refuse to capitulate this term to people who use it for so much harm. But I also do wrestle with that time, just being honest with like, does that name still serve its purpose for me as an individual?
Yeah. I mean, I'm all about reclamation, honestly. And so that's that's why I really got on board and really loved what TNE was setting out to do, because I was like, take back that word, change it into something better. I mean, Black people are all about reclaiming things. So I was all for it. Okay. And I do think it is hard for people to hear that word. And I actually just did a podcast talking about that. And I was like, look, we're just trying to show people like, this is what it means to be a good Christian. And it really isn't as difficult as a lot of people have made it. Like, show up for one another, love people, follow the life and teachings of Jesus. This isn't difficult. This isn't difficult. And somehow it's become this just crazy like matrix of just harmful ideas. And I just love that we're really trying to fight back against that. And I think so many people have needed this, and you started it at such the right time. That's what's crazy. It's like, it's the right time. And now look, this is like Christian nationalism and all this stuff is like at the forefront of everything. And people are like, oh, this is what TNE's been talking about for years. Okay.
Right.
I get it now. I get it now. Yeah.
I mean, we were the organization that interviewed Doug Wilson before CNN did. I mean, that guy's been on the podcast. To me.
Which is wild to me.
It is really. I want to say one brief thing about the evangelical term, then I'll move on. But the word evangelical just means someone who brings good news. And frankly, I don't think evangelicals are bringing good news anymore. So why don't we bring some good news back, right? And 100%. Also, in this, I don't say this that often publicly, but it's you and me. Who cares? There is something satisfying knowing that white evangelical fundamentalists can't do a darn thing about us using the term evangelical and being fully inclusive and fully justice oriented, and much more progressive. Like, it's a little bit of salt in the wound that it just satisfies a little bit, frankly.
I love it. I mean, they have turned woke into a pejorative.
I know.
I mean, I grew up saying, like, people saying woke, right? It just means to be aware, and to be aware. And it's become more of a beautiful term of, being aware of injustice and, standing up for people. But they have turned it into this negative thing. And I've always, what is so bad about being woke? Just explain that to me. Of course, I don't get an answer. Of course, right. I don't get an answer. And I saw that, speaking on the woke thing, I saw somebody say, I think it was a thread that was like, if people are going to say that they don't like DEI, they need to say the full phrase. Say, I do not like diversity, I don't like equity, and I don't like inclusion. Because then you just sound like a horrible person. But you got to say the whole thing with your full chest. If you're
That's such a good point. You're right. Yeah, say it out loud. Like, spell it out for the class.
Yes, but it is a lot of white evangelicals and fundamentalists and that whole environment that are against these things, which is completely opposite of everything that Jesus did. So I love that we're like, nope, no. We're reclaiming that term. We're doing the things that he said to do, and this is what it is. And we're calling ourselves the new evangelicals.
You did not grow up in the space that I grew up in, right? You grew up very
not at all, Tim. Oh my gosh! And I know I've done a podcast episode with you. It was many years ago. So I grew up in an AME church. If you don't know what AME is, it's African Methodist Episcopal Church. Black church. I mean, it's a black church. And it's very, very, based on liberation theology and social justice. And it was just, I was so shocked when I was exposed to conservative Christian theology, because I went to a conservative Christian college, but I went in because they had a very good music program, and I was a Christian, and I was like, oh, Christian, a great music program. Yeah. Listen, I showed up. First of all, the first thing that tipped me off was they were leading worship with the guitar. And I was like, what is this? Okay. That's the first thing.
Where's the keys?
I was like, where's the organ? Yeah, right. Where is the choir? Right. Okay. I was like, this,
that is so funny, but so true.
That was my first red flag. Okay. And then I know that people are probably cracking that up, but you have to understand, literally, we grew up with a choir and an organ. That's what Black church was. And you did a lot of a cappella. I mean, you have to understand, spirituals and gospel music, it literally started as called field songs in Negro spirituals back in the slavery days, right? So you didn't have much, and you didn't need much to stay rooted in your faith when it came to music. So to have music led with the guitar, and you had drums, and you had just 6 singers, I was like, what is going on, right? Anyway, so I got over that. But then it was just talking to people. I was like, this doesn't seem right to me, how you view the LGBTQ community. At the time, it was just, gay people and lesbians, right? That's all it was at that time, but I'm not trying to date myself, but, but those were the only alternative, I'll say, identities to them, but they were still wrong. And I was like, why? They love each other. What's the deal, right? And then it was also realizing, now that I have language for it, how many microaggressions I experienced and how different a Black experience in those spaces was. And I say this, and I will continue to say this, I went into that college liberal, and I left so freaking liberal. It's not even funny. I was like, there is no way on God's green earth I'm going to be associated with this theology and this ideology and this mindset. And I just knew that all I wanted to do was adhere to what Jesus said that we should do, which was to love God and love one another. And it has always been that simple for me. And I'm so grateful to my parents that I was raised in such a liberal, progressive, inclusive, open-minded space that I was always exposed to different walks of life. I was exposed to, people in the LGBTQ community very early. I was exposed to different faiths. My babysitter was Jewish. My dad worked with Muslim people. I had always been exposed to diversity. And so it was not weird or strange or fearful for me whatsoever. And I never understood how diversity was such an issue for people and just accepting people as they are. So yes, that's a long answer to your question, but no, I had never grown up like that, and being exposed to it, it never made sense to me. And it still doesn't. And it's only gotten worse, which I've realized now.
Has it ever? Has it ever? Yeah. Well, I wanted to hear then from you, you bring such a different, your lived experience is so different from mine in so many ways, right? And that's going to shape how TNE moves forward, right? And I think part of the reason why a lot of our social media content was so, like, people called it negative, but it really was just exposing like the negativity that we were experiencing, right? Was because I came from that world, and I'm like, oh my God, is anyone else seeing this? Like I felt like I was never fully able to communicate my feeling of, do you see how this is getting more and more extreme, in the sense of those people like Doug Wilson? He's been in that space for decades, but he's been becoming more and more popular, right? These extreme spaces are growing and taking root. And so it was easy for me to pick that out, because I'm like, look, I grew up with this. I can spot it a mile away. Watch out, society. This is what, I was saying for a while, of like, this is what Christian nationalism will do under a Trump administration. And unfortunately, we're 8 months in now, 9 months in, and like, we're seeing things that are just like, absolutely horrific from this administration. But that's because I grew up in that space and I deconstructed, but you had a completely different experience. So how does that experience for you, like, how do you think about TNE and how it evolves from here?
Well, I think first and foremost, I want to say that pointing out those things and continuing to shine a spotlight is so vital and important, because I think when you started doing it, even now, like, people are still slowly waking up, but I don't think there's been a full awakening to how bad it actually is. So it's very important to continue to educate people on what is happening. But I think for me, because I never grew up, and I feel like, I'm not trying to sound pretentious when I say this, but I feel like I grew up with the right version of Christianity, is being able to lead people to that and say, this is what we do now. This is how we move forward. This is how we build that better path. This is how we reclaim our faith and show people what Christians are supposed to do, what they're supposed to look like, and how they're supposed to act. So it really is a both and situation. Like, we need to continue to put a spotlight on the horrors of Christian nationalism, but it can't just stop there. We have to say, okay, look at what Doug Wilson is doing. Now, how can we be better and stop it?
Right.
Because it has to be stopped. It has to be stopped, because, I mean, we joke about The Handmaid's Tale, but y'all, like, they want The Handmaid's Tale. That's what they want. They don't want women to vote. He literally said, women are people that people come out of. Like, what? Yep. My mouth was on the floor when he said that. I was like, okay, this is what people really think. And these people are getting followers, and it's gaining traction. We have to combat this, and we have to combat it with I'm one of those people that I definitely, when they go low, we go high. I really am that. We have to combat it with love. We have to combat it with compassion and empathy. I'm such a MLK follower too. Like, I really believe in the path that he took. We could put a little Malcolm X in there if we need to, but I'm really the MLK person, right? So that's really what I feel like I'm bringing in. That's why I think this is a really good pairing between the two of us, because my background is so different, and you have the experience and the knowledge of knowing what that mindset is and how they think and how they function. And I'm like, okay, now that we know this is how we put our faith into action. This is how we show what it means to be a good Christian without the lens of the abuse and the trauma and all of that pain, because I don't have any of that. I've always just led with love and empathy. That's the only thing that has ever guided me in anything that I've ever done. So I think that pairing is really going to make TNE just be a leader, and for this movement, and really be able to push back in a positive way. Yeah.
I love that you don't have that trauma. I mean, it must be amazing and really great. People on the podcast who are listening are probably like, wow, what's it like not growing up being afraid of hell, But I honestly, all jokes aside, I'll make it personal for me. I have realized that, I'm 5 years into this almost, and, deconstruction is this term that we were all using, and we were going through it, me and the audience and the community. And at least for me, I'm not sure how people listening to this think about themselves, but I realized that, I kind of went through this season, right? Of I was working through my own hurt and frustration and anger, and it was coming out in really intense ways. And for us, and I've always struggled with trying to solve the riddle of what's the better path forward look like? I mean, I've used that phrase for a long time. We've interviewed a lot of different people to think about that. But as an organization, how do we offer a better path forward? And I think that's one of the reasons why I told the board over a year ago, look, I can't, I don't want to be an executive director of this thing. It's not what I want to do long term. Also, I'm not great at it because I can only go so far as an individual. I can only go where I am. And I don't really know what that better path is. I haven't experienced it really. I'm still kind of exploring the different rooms of Christianity. I'm still kind of in that phase. And having someone like yourself with a whole different background of no, I actually lived that better path forward for most of my life, I think gives people, including myself, something to follow. Oh, okay, you've been there before. Can you take us there? Because we're all just trying to feel our way through the dark, trying to figure this out.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to know for you, though, what was that pivotal moment? Because being in this space now and having conversations with everyone and realizing the deep hurt and spiritual abuse and trauma that people have experienced and the type of things that we're taught in church, I'm whoa, that's a lot to break down and to deconstruct and to figure out and then to rebuild. So I guess this is a two-part question. What was the pivotal moment for you, and why did you decide to stay with it? Because I know a lot of people that have been screw it. I'm not a Christian. I don't believe anything anymore. I want nothing to do with you people or this faith. Don't even put that label on me. But you didn't give up. You did want to try to reclaim and fix it and all of that. So what was the pivotal moment, and why did you decide to stay? Because I think that's important.
Yeah. I mean, look, for my church experience was actually largely positive relationally. I did not suffer from spiritual abuse. I didn't suffer from any kind of physical abuse. Most of my pastors were fine. Now, Chris, I'm a white man in the church. It's kind of designed for people like me, so that has to be acknowledged. And even my last church, when things kind of fell apart in a really unhealthy way, I don't call that spiritual abuse. I call it an adverse religious experience. It was just not really healthy. It hurt for sure, but I don't think my pastor was trying to manipulate me or was trying to abuse me. So, there were, obviously Trump was a come to Jesus moment for me, but there were it was kind of more of death by 1,000 paper cuts, right? Where as you're kind of going along this path, you start kind of questioning things okay, so God is love, because you're told that God is love, but also God is going to send people to hell forever because God is just, and that's the only way that God can get the glory that he's due is if people go to hell forever. And you're again that's just a logical thing, right? I don't know how that works. And if God is a father and I'm supposed to emulate God, I would never, especially not being a parent, the thought of me eternally punishing one of my kids is unfathomable to me, right?
Right.
It becomes it becomes real abuse. So I always had questions about that. I was always curious about the Bible. Where do we get it from? But for most of my life, the evangelical machine kind of has this really effective way of convincing you that what they're giving you is not only true, but is really the only truly Christian way to view these things. I'll give you one example. So back in the day, you know who Rob Bell is, I'm sure, at this point.
Yeah, sure.
So, Rob Bell kind of explodes in the white evangelical scene. He writes a lot of books, and he eventually wrote a book called Love Wins. And in Love Wins, in one part of one chapter of the book, he simply posits the question, does God get what God wants regarding the afterlife? And is it possible that one day all people might be reconciled back to God because God's uncontrollable love reaches even into the darkest of places, right? So he's essentially making a case for universalism, but he's doing it in a way where he's asking the question, he's not prescribing it. And the evangelical machine went crazy. I mean, I remember going to a church in my neighborhood, and they were handing out pamphlets of beware of this book, it's heresy. And then Francis Chan wrote a book in response, along with a person named Preston Sprinkle, who's actually still around, giving the biblical response to Rob's book, which, shocker alert, was Eternal Conscious Torment. And I remember reading that because I trusted Francis Chan, and I'm like, okay, I guess this is it. Like, I guess the only biblical view of hell is eternal conscious torment. I didn't realize that, like, actually, that's one out of three major perspectives in church history. Arguably, the earliest perspective has been universal reconciliation. That's very Christian, right? So I think, like, I always had those kinds of questions. I always wondered, like, why we were so mean to gay people, even though I wasn't affirming. I didn't understand why we were picking on that one particular sin, quote unquote, right? The Bible talks about greed way more than it talks about gay people. I don't get it. I was always asking those questions, even while I was a conservative evangelical on Facebook. I even had an amateur podcast with some friends, and I would get tons of flack from my other friends of being too whatever. But I was just curious. So all that's in the background. And then Trump happens. So I think I had all these little cracks in the dam. I was kind of sprinkling little leaks, but I can usually plug them up and still stay. But watching, my Sunday school teachers who raised me on Facebook now telling me I got to vote for the guy who's bragging about assaulting women. I'm like, guys, you taught me not to compromise my values. So in a weird way, I was just being a consistent evangelical at the time by saying, no, I'm not going to compromise what you taught me. So the reason why I'm still a Christian is because I am committed to being a Christ follower. Like, I read the red letters, and I'm like, there's something about this: love your enemy, clothe the naked, liberate the oppressed, blessed are the poor. There's something very counter-empire, counter-culture about this person. I don't know what it all means necessarily. I'm not sure what happens when we die, but I'm okay with that, I choose to follow in the way of Jesus. Which is one of my big critiques about Christian nationalists. They rarely quote Jesus. If you ever listen to Christian nationalists preach, they rarely, if ever, quote the red letters. So to me, it's like a logical, I'm being consistent with what I committed my life to years ago. Following Jesus, loving your neighbor, etc.
I love that. And that to me is the simplicity of it. It's the red letters.
Right.
It's the red letters. That's what it is. And it's so funny that you say that, because, like, I had realized that, but hearing you say it out loud, like, there is no Jesus in any of their talk.
I listened. Look, you know me. I go to America Fest every year. These pastors talk. I'm telling you, they quote Jesus only on one thing. On the verses on divorce, and they tie that back to biblical sexuality about one man, one woman. But they're never going to quote Jesus says love your enemies. How do we do that better? You're never going to hear them say that.
Yeah. But again, we're the ones that are cherry picking. So
oh my gosh, we're
the heathens.
Clearly.
Oh my gosh. Well, okay. Before we wrap up, I want to ask you, and then you can ask me.
Okay, I love that.
What does a better path forward look like to you? What is your dream better path forward, just in terms of a faith-based life or faith-based existence, whatever? What is a better path forward to you?
Man, I would love to see the word Christian in America be associated with full inclusivity, justice-oriented. Hey, we got universal health care passed because we work with other people to get it done. I would love to see that. Now, of course, there are amazing Christian groups doing amazing work, right? And we work with them and we know them, whether it's Otis Moss, right, in Chicago, or it's Red Letter Christians Against Christian Nationalism, for sure. But, like, there's a caricature, there's like a stereotype of, if you're a Christian in America, especially if you look like me, you must be homophobic and bigoted. I would love for that stereotype to be flipped on its head. I would love for us to be under attack because we are too graceful, because we want the jails emptied, because we don't want people on death row anymore, because we want billionaires to pay their fair share so we can get affordable health care in this country. I would love that to happen.
Yeah. I love that.
Okay.
Love that.
How about you? Let's hear it.
It's very simple, actually. We always grew up hearing, they will know we are Christians by our love. And that's all I want, for people to know we're Christians by our love. I don't want to have to give all of these disclaimers anymore. When I say that I'm a Christian, I'm like, no. I don't believe that. I believe this. It's like, my gosh, I have to give you a whole essay before you're like, oh, okay, you're not one of those Christians. I don't want to have to give disclaimers anymore. I just want people to know that we're Christians by our love. It is that simple. It's that simple. How we show up in the world, how we treat others, how we advocate for one another. It's how you're showing up. It's doing the actual work. It's emulating the life and teachings of Jesus. That's all that I want. And I think that we're trying our hardest to do that. And I'm really proud of the work that we're doing.
Me too. What do you think folks can look forward to in this podcast as TNE evolves? I think we have a lot of listeners who have been here since the beginning. We have a lot of new listeners, and honestly, as you know, because you have a podcast too, it's humbling when people tell you, "I listen to every episode." It's like, wow, like thank you. And so, for you, and I know we talk about this offline a lot, like as we evolve as an organization, how do you see this podcast being part of that?
I mean, I get a lot out of meaningful conversations. And I think that that's something that you've really set a wonderful foundation with since you started this, is bringing on people that maybe the audience wouldn't necessarily have been exposed to had they not heard on this podcast, to give them a perspective to think about, or to critically think about something, or they can take certain points that were made back to their MAGA family if they need to, and be like, hey, I heard this on this podcast. Will you listen to it? And I just think being able to give people the gift of those conversations, of those thoughtful conversations, is really crucial. And all the other components, of course, that we're adding to TNE, but this was really the origin of this organization. And having the faithful listener base that you're having and the new listener base that we're getting, I think that just getting a lot out of these conversations is really crucial, and hopefully will galvanize people to want to put their faith into action. Because I think that people have been really stuck not knowing what to do right now. And I understand that feeling, because it does feel kind of helpless. But I hope that we can be the organization, with our media, with our education, our advocacy, all of it, that gives people the tools to fight back and move forward, reclaim their faith, and show up in a positive way. And it does start with this show. So yeah.
If people listening are like, I want to get more like connected to people with TNE, or they want to get more involved, what is one thing, if you could tell everyone listening right now, you should go do this to get more involved with us, what would it be?
Well, it's hard. We have so many amazing things. I'm bragging on TNE. Yeah, I should. I mean, I would say to join TNE Connect, because there are, first of all, community is an invaluable thing. It's priceless. And especially now, we need to be in community. We have so many people a part of our platform now, and it also it's off of Meta, so that's like a real big plus. It's not on Facebook, it's not on Instagram, it's our own proprietary platform. It's great. And you can connect with people that are going through your same faith journey, that are in your area, that, we have courses, we have different group chats. I just think it's the best place to be if you are trying to either deconstruct, reconstruct, grow in your faith, learn more, find people, to connect with. Just going to TNE Connect is the best. So you can go to thenewevangelicals.com/connect and sign up, make a platform, and just meet people, be in community. Community is the main thing that people need right now.
Yeah, I think TNE Connect is like the best kept secret of TNE that people don't always know about, because that's where our new Theology 101 courses are going to be, which you have planned out, I think, until early next year, if I'm not mistaken. And so all the courses that we are setting up with actual scholars will be happening there. Rainbow Conversations is happening there for the LGBTQ plus community. You and I do community check-ins every other Monday, first and third Monday of the month, I think it is. And also, like, if you want to, it's an app on your phone, or you can access it on the web on any platform, including your computer. But I love it because it actually will connect you to people based on mutual interest or even location. If you want people to have access to like what town you're in, it's really robust. Like, it's a really deep platform, and we're just kind of getting started with it. But I see that becoming more and more of our main hub over time. I love that it's off Meta. I love that it can't be banned or shadow banned. Look, tomorrow, if Meta wanted to, our Instagram could be gone. Like, that could just be 100%. Totally gone. And so it's nice having our own space that is totally managed by us, for us, off of the little greasy hands of Zuckerberg.
The tech bros,
so, yeah, the tech bros, exactly. So I agree. And the last question I have, Malynda, and you don't have to answer this if you don't want to, is there anything that you can tease that is coming up with TNE that folks should be looking out for?
Yeah, I can actually. And I'm actually very happy to talk about this because people have been looking for ways to get involved and to give back. So we are going to be launching a TNE Action component to TNE that'll be a little hub on TNE Connect. So you do have to sign up for TNE Connect to access this. And also, TNE Connect is completely free. Yes. Everything that we offer is free. I want to make sure everyone understands that. Yep. Nothing that we offer is under a paywall, and it never will be. That's something that we are just staying on. We don't want to charge you for anything. So, but TNE Action, it's going to be a hub where you can find different petitions to sign, different events that you can go to, different resources, other nonprofits that you can support with different topics. Like we'll have things on immigration, ways you can help for Gaza, just a bunch of different things that I know people want actionable items to do. So we're going to be launching that at the end of this month. It's called TNE Action, but it's only on TNE Connect. So you got to sign up for TNE Connect if you want to get access to those resources, but it's going to be a really great component in addition to the organization.
I love that. And friends, if you're listening, we would love your feedback. I'd love to know what you think about, this evolution and just some of the things that Malynda and I talked about. You can email info@thenewevangelicals.com. Frankly, I love hearing from you. It's always nice, especially on podcasts, because there's no comment section underneath episodes. So it's always great to hear from an audience that you don't always hear from. Just your thoughts on all of this, really. I'm excited. And I told you before we started recording that being back from sabbatical, like I do feel like I don't feel nearly as stressed as I did before you took over and before we had like a real structure, because I don't feel like it's all on my shoulders. There are parts of things that used to be on my shoulders that I'm like, oh, someone else is managing that. They'll take care of it. It's all good. I can sign off, be with my family tonight, not be on my phone. That is nice. So I'm really pumped. I love the direction we're heading in. It's fantastic. And I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, and I thank you for your trust, honestly, because it's a big deal to give your baby away in that sense. So I appreciate it. I really do. And I'm excited. I'm very excited.
Look, I like being honest with you and the audience. I made a point in my mind. I didn't want to have the founder syndrome, right? Of like, oh, you have to have your hands and everything, and this isn't how you would do it, so it can't be as good. I really told myself, like, look, you told your board over a year ago that you need someone else to do this job. Like you are not built for it long term. You can't do all this stuff. And they believed you. And now we have this opportunity to have someone else be in this executive director role. So like if they make changes, maybe approach it with curiosity. This is what I was telling myself, when all this was going on. Like maybe approach it with curiosity instead of judgment and let things play out. And I love it. Like the more I think about it that way, the more I'm like, this is great. Like this is, it would be such a heavy burden to be trying to micromanage, what you were doing and trying to be like, we used to do it this way. Why are we changing it? Instead of like, no, like the evolution has to happen, right? It has to grow. So I feel, and I mean this, like no BS to you or to the audience. Like I cannot be happier. I am thrilled. And I think you and I are going to be working great together along with our board, Rebecca, the board president. It feels like we have just amazing people behind the scenes with us now, and that feels really nice.
It's a solid team.
I agree.
Solid team. And we're just getting started. So we're just getting started.
Hell yeah. Well, thanks, friends, for listening. Honestly, it really means a lot. Make sure you give us your feedback, info@the-new Evangelicals. New season of the podcast starts. I can't wait to share with you some of the interviews that we've had, and we have some more cooking up. So I'm looking forward to it. Thanks for being here.